topic I'm going to talk about is mainly how we see the Middle East and North African news in different parts of the world, and it's not a research I've done or anything like that. It's from my own experience as a journalist in 3 different places. That was from Lyon in France to UK here. My name is Anas Soukhias, and just introduced me. I'm a broadcast journalist. I've been doing the job for 18 years, and I think it's sometimes you get to the point that it's enough after 18 years, but I'm still there. I mean, the presentation title is How the World Sees MENA, and again, it's for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to talk about MENA as described by other certain websites or certain maps. That includes basically the Arab countries plus Iran and Turkey, and sometimes they include Cyprus as well. So it's news at the end of the day. I'm not going to talk about something fancy here. It's not really something that attracts lots of people, but we have to live with it. We have it every day in our lives, in television, on radio, in radio, and now online. Wherever you go, you just find lots of news coming into your iPhone or iPad or whatever. So what's in the news in Middle East? How the world see what's interesting from the Middle East and North Africa for the rest of the world? Unfortunately, it's not really interesting that much. I mean, if we talk about having a recent timeline, late 90s, the main news coming from the Middle East was basically from Algeria. And that was the Islamic armed groups, what's been defined at that time as terrorism, and the attacks that happened in Algeria for quite several years, not just a few months or so. Everything that happened in Algeria at that time was really negative, or gives a very negative impact about what's happening in Algeria, because the focus was not about anything in Algeria but what's happening in the mountains, and about the group Islamic Army, which is called Jia as well, which has been attacking civilians. And the truth has been lost, to be honest, because nobody knows exactly who was doing what at that time. Lots of people are actually accused. Amnesty International in 2006, they published a report which actually accused the government as well, government forces of using arms against civilians as well. That's in the late 90s. Going to 2000, the turn of the 21st century, the second Palestinian Intifada. That's when Ariel Sharon went to the Wailing Wall, and the Intifada started again. Again, it's about violence, it's about unrest, it's about trouble happening in a certain part of the Middle East. So again, what happened in New York, although it's far away from the Middle East, it has its impact on the Middle East as well. Yet again, what happened is terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, the 2 towers, but the perpetrators were actually coming from the Middle East. So the situation actually got worse about what kind of news we get from the Middle East. I've never actually seen any kind of when I talk about news, I'm not talking about programs or documentaries. I'm talking about current affair or news in the bulletins. I haven't seen anything interesting coming from the Middle East or North Africa apart from violence and unrest. That was, I think, the worst, because the implication was actually it has its impact until today. We do feel it. Everybody knows that. Now, after that, we have the war in Afghanistan, Taliban, if you can call it. We know Afghanistan might not be classified as Middle East, but it's still related, as it's been explained by Allah now, because of Islam or the proximity to the Middle East, and again because many of the people who actually perpetrated the September 11 attacks were actually the people who are actually describing them as being trained in Afghanistan. and that's Al-Qaeda. Going on, 2003 again, we have the war in Iraq, which is again one of the consequences of what happened in September 11. Moving on, what we have now recently, this man who set himself on fire, he self-immolated himself basically because of trouble, corruption, police harassment. And again, this is the kind of news we get from there. So it's all more or less, it's a negative kind of news we get. There's nothing pleasant about it. Now, after this, we had a series of uprisings, what we call the Arab Spring. And it should have been positive in a way, because it's removing tyrants from rule. People have been there for 42 years, 30 years, and so on. So we had the Arab Spring. We had it in different places, starting in Tunisia, going down to Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Syria, and then other countries are still feeling the effect of the Arab Spring in a way. But still now, if you look at what's happening in these countries, there's no peace or stability. It's still, the countries in the Middle East or Middle East and North Africa are still suffering from lots of accumulation of issues that has been there for a long time, for decades, not like for just years or so. Now we come to the thing of axis of evil, which has been described by George W. Bush after September 11. Most of the axis of evil countries actually come from MENA, apart from Cuba and North Korea. This actually made a couple of comedians in the United States who are from Arab origins to start this tour, which is the Axis of Evil tour. A couple of them, it's 4 of them, 1 of them is Iranian, and 3 of them are actually of Palestinian origins. And these people moved, actually carrying lots of questions about what's going on in the way people are actually dealing with Middle Eastern people. Dino Ubaidullah is an Arab American comedian, and he's part of the Axis of Evil tour. He was asking this in one of his stand-up comedies. He said people are afraid of us because people don't know really who we are. And this is one of the things that for Middle Eastern countries, they have to acknowledge the fact that they're not presenting themselves in a better way for the rest of the world to know exactly the positive side of them.
Are afraid of us because they don't know really who we are. I mean, honestly, there are basically 2 news stories about us, and it's no one's fault, but there are. There's the bad story, where we're described as militant, gunmen, and terrorists, and then the occasional positive one, where we're described as alleged militant, gunmen, or terrorists. I'm jealous. We don't get a whole month that celebrates our heritage like other groups in America, like African Americans, Black History Month, Asians, Asian Awareness Month, Hispanic Awareness Month. What do we get? Orange alert. Not what we want. And I'll tell you this, even the most open-minded people, you've been conditioned by the media to be afraid of people with accents. And I can show you, I can say the same thing with or without a Middle Eastern accent. It can change the whole meaning. Why? If I go, hey, wait till Friday night. We've been planning this for months. People be talking about this for years. It could be a party, right? If I go, wait till Friday night. We've been planning this for months. People be talking about this for years. Scary, right?
I mean, just simply whatever comes from the Middle East might be of a negative connotation and negative impact because of the media, simply. And the reason is because the media is now flowing from certain parts of the world to the Middle East, but there's no counter media as such from the Middle East to the rest of the world to tell them exactly what we do or all these things. It's not only media, it's also about centers to alert the people and to let them know exactly how things are different from what they actually read in tabloids or in certain news agencies. One of the examples is just we had it. For example, the UK, for example, they have the British Council. The French got the French Cultural Centers, Goethe Institute, German one, and the American Center as well. I never heard about an Arab center for culture center in the rest of the world, and that is really a defect, I see, because the communication between the two words is missing. There's one flow of information from one side to the other, but there's no counter flow or back flow from the other side. So what's needed is basically there's an information exchange is a two-way process. If it's missing somewhere, if we don't have the two arrows, MENA, which is the Middle East and North Africa, not telling the world what they're doing, basically the world won't know about them until they know about them in their own media, in the way they actually look at things from their own perspective. So it's more or less it's about getting the world together. We live now in a very small world. I mean, it's not changing, it's not shrinking, but it's shrinking by information. Now we can get information from what's happening in Japan in the same minute as it happens. And same way it should be in the Middle East, not just only the negative things, but the positive things has to flow to the rest of the world. This is me. I think I've taken too much time, so if there's any questions or anything.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.